So the question you probably want to ask yourself is, how does a nice guy like me go from industry to academia, right? That's the question. That's what you want to know, right? So here's the way it works. We had a couple people I talked to tonight who were either retired or semi-retired, and so they're thinking about being retired. So here's how it works. So you decide you're going to retire, which I did in 2008 as Chief Procurement Officer, Colgate-Palmolive, and then go home. I live in New York in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, and because that's where Colgate-Palmolive is on 300 Park. And you go home to your lovely wife, my wife Diane, and I'm here, and a day goes by, and the next day goes by, and you say, where's lunch? Right? Because, the corporate, cafeteria, they get lunches. So this goes on for about a week, and she finally says, I don't do lunch. And by the way, get out of here. So I ended up looking, I won't bore you with the details, 4 or 5 things that I was looking at doing. But one of them was teaching part-time for some university in the New York area. So I actually hooked up with Dr. Lay. I don't know if many people know her. She's a fantastic lady at Rutgers Business School. And so all I wanted to do is just work part-time, teach a couple courses, obviously not have my wife make me lunch anymore. And so I go over there, and she says, this is great. You can teach some part-time courses, supply chain strategies or procurement or whatever I do. And, as I'm feeling pretty good, I figure this is great. Diane's going to be really happy. And the next thing I know that she mentions to me, they just formed in 2008. A dean had decided to have a separate supply chain management program. I didn't know about that, right? Why would I know, right? And they said, could you go up to the dean's office? Let's talk to the dean. So I go up to the dean's office, and the dean says, we're all excited. We got this new supply chain management program. And I said, now you can instead of working part-time, you can work almost full-time. You can help us, promote the program and market it. You'd be a perfect person for his office. My wife is going to love this. This is going to be fantastic. So I go home to Diane. I say, this is it. You're going to be very happy. I am now going to be working full-time for Rutgers, at least in the spring and the fall, and you won't have to cook me lunch. And she said, I thought you were going to spend time with me. So this is about, which we all know, change management and communication. And that's how it started. She still doesn't make me lunch. Okay, so I'm going to talk about talent, and hopefully I'll take questions, pretty small groups, so I'll take questions as we go through it. And I have a couple of handouts I'm going to hand around. I do work in this area. It's an interesting area for me. I've done some papers in it. I normally don't do research, but I have done some papers with Hovey from Ohio State, if you want to see them, in the talent management area. But let me just tell you what we'll do. So I'll talk about the key challenges. I'll talk about talent management strategies. I'll talk about partnering with universities, and then some key takeaways for the evening. And we'll be done relatively early because I'm from New York and we talk fast. But before you do, let me give you a commercial for Rutgers, for people that don't know Rutgers. So we established this program when I came on board in July of 2008. We have over 30 full-time professors that teach everything from end-to-end supply chain. And in 2001, we've always had a very successful Rutgers Center for Supply Chain. We have about 23 companies. Some of you are members. You can go on our site and check, or you can ask me. But if you're a member like Novartis, we were talking about earlier, eh? So you have the same rights that Bill McClure and everybody else at Novartis. Now, don't send me 30,000 people tomorrow morning, eh? What you do is, so if you want to, you can leverage that. The membership that you pay from Novartis is applicable to anybody that wants help. So we've had that in place for a number of times, 20 companies. We do a lot of research, sustainability, responsibility. Just as an example in risk management, if you're interested, I'm holding a panel on the 24th of January with a fellow, Rash Aragon, who is going to talk about leadership during when things happen in the area of risk management. So you can look on our website or find that if you want. Right? So we do a lot of research. We talk about research. We launched an undergraduate program in 2009. We did not have an undergraduate program in supply chain management. We launched in 2009. The first year we had 57 supply chain management majors. The second year we had 157. The third year we had 300. We now have 520 supply chain management majors in undergraduate in Newark and New Brunswick. 500. Double the last 3 years. This is what keeps Dr. Lay up at night, because we need professors. We talked about this. They need professors to teach all these students. That's a good news. And I do handle the ranking externally, so we're very proud of the fact that we're ranked number 3 by Gartner Research, and last year we were ranked number 20 by U.S. News and World. So we're a formidable supply chain management program, relatively new. Okay, if you want to talk to me later about it, you can do that. So let me talk to challenges. So what the heck is the problem, right, with talent management? So let me walk you through a couple of things, and I have a couple of handouts I'll pass around. But skilled contributors are leaving the workforce. You say, well, why is that, right? Well, demographics are working against us, right? Just sheer demographics. So what's happening is that baby boomers, like me, are getting older, they're retiring, and they're coming out of the workforce. So about 25% of the working population will reach retirement age in 2015, right? 10 million workers. During the same period, 35 to 44-year-olds will decline by 15%. These are the people, you know it very well because you all work there, eh? These are the people that run the big projects for you, huh? And they're declining. 10,000 baby boomers are actually retiring each day. And if that isn't bad enough, the surveys show that nobody's been happy in their job for a number of years and it's gotten worse. And so basically it says that as they survey the people, every year, and I'll tell you why in a minute, that people are less and less happy. So if it isn't bad enough that demographics are hurting you, people aren't happy in their jobs. Now you would say during a recession, you might say, well, I'm not going to leave, but what do you think is going to happen now? Last I checked, things are looking better, right, every week. They're going to leave you if you don't treat them right. So it's a perfect storm. So I mentioned the skilled contributors. If you think about what we call in supply chain management the effects of globalization, offshoring, right, and outsourcing. You used to get your people trained there. So a simple thing like tactical procurement, right? Space I used to work in. You used to have people do tactical procurement. They get pretty good at it. They become strategic. Well, what we did in Colgate, we were in the transformation of 2004 to 2008, we outsourced that to IBM. We didn't need those people anymore. We don't have a training ground for those people. And the same thing with some of your manufacturing, right? Some of your manufacturing has been offshored. You used to train people on those factory floors about supply chain and how to work with groups. They're gone. Right? Doesn't mean everybody, but it means that it certainly is a factor. Reluctant of mobility of top performers. How many people have talked to some young people lately and you say, we'd really like you to have you come work and, blah, 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 and they go, oh. Now, you don't want to ask me, right? Because I've moved 13 times in my career, and I took my wife everywhere. One of the reasons I'm still in New York is she says, that's it, I ain't never moving again, right? Which is fair enough. But a lot of young people don't. If you don't believe me, if you saw the article in the Wall Street, I'll pass this around. This was in last week. Companies say goodbye to the burbs. And this talks about the young people don't want to live in the burbs anymore. You can take a look at it. This is just last week, right? So take a look at that. So they're very reluctant. Or what really happens is, because most young people today, quite frankly, have a working spouse, and they don't want to move. So this is a very, very big problem. And then, if you think about all this, what you're asking is that fewer and fewer supply chain professionals are being asked to do more. So what's happened is both as the downsizing occurred in recessions, as well as the globalization, outsourcing, those types of things, is that people ask to do more and more. So when you ask to do more and more, they're less likely to be happy, right? Maybe some, are you all happy here? Pretty happy, right? A couple glasses of wine, right? So what's going to happen is we forget what it was like. So I worked at Colgate prior to the recession. So you may not, I know we all forget this, right? But before I retired in the years 2006 and 2007 and the beginning of 2008, we couldn't fill every job. We had 30, 35 openings forever. And I don't know whether they finally filled them after the recession, during the recession. But the point would be is now it's starting to come back. Hopefully you believe we're coming back. And as it comes back, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to have jobs you can't get placements for. All because of these things. So 2 key points. First one is that you got to manage this in your business, right? The failure to management is it's a dereliction of your duties, right? Companies have abysmal track records in this area of managing talent. I'll give you some examples later, right? And lastly, you need to spend more and more time. So let me ask the group here. So you can, this is when you ask questions, right? So the first thing is, how many people spend 10% managing talent? 20? 30? Right? They say you're probably now that you've got to spend 30 to 40% of your time managing talent. It's a lot of time. But you're going to have to do that to get the talent you want. All right, so let's talk about a couple of talent strategies. So one of the things you have to do, which people forget, is that you have to do some sort of assessment in your group about what skills do they have and what skills do you want. So let me ask the group here. We'll just keep the hands up as we go. How many people have done a talent assessment in the last year? 2 years? 3 years? Not many, right? Right? So one would think that if you're, the first thing you do before you worry about maintaining, right, recruiting and all that stuff, you got to figure out what you want. And you got to figure out what you got, because some of those people are hard to get rid of, right? Yeah, right. So you got to do some sort of internal survey, and this is one of the areas I think people are abysmal at. We were forced to do it when we did the global procurement transformation in 2004 to 2008. We actually did it. It's a long process to do it right. You have to look at competencies and those types of things and what people have and don't have. But I would suggest one of the takeaways is, why couldn't you do it? This isn't going to cost you a lot of money. You can hire external people if you want, but you can get it. And here's how it works. You want to be able to identify the desired skills, right? Whatever the skills, standards, and you want to assess them. And you can do that through interviews or testing and those things. So people, you can hire people like ISM who will come in and do this for you. I don't know if Apex does it. You have to tell me. But so there are people that can do this for you. And then you say, oh, we got a gap here now, because we know this is the skills I want. Here's what we actually have. And we got this gap. And you need this for two reasons. One, you need to know if what your bench strength is and what do you need to improve. But more importantly, what are you going to hire that next person? What skills do you want him to? Do you want him to have, the current skills, or do you want new skills? I'd argue you want to make sure that generally you want to hire people that will take on some of these new skills. So then you want to do two things. You want to develop a talent development plan and a recruiting strategy. Talent development plan, first thing you want to do in your talent development plan is you want to don't lose those good people. So at Colgate during 2004, 2008, we were doing a massive amount of change. So about 70% of the people, we had the 500 people working for me, about 70% of the people changed job description, reporting relationship, right? Pay grade, a bunch of stuff. So these people were pretty unsettled, right? They didn't know what was going on, and some of them were leaving and those kind of things. So we had to put retention plans in for the top performers, and we'll talk about that later, but you can put retention plans in for those people, right? And then you got to train them. And we did that. We trained all our senior people that were going to lead these teams, global teams, but you also got to train the lower level people because they want to be trained, right? And then this is the hardest part. People are shaking their head. Is how do you get rid of those people? Now I don't know what it's like in your business, but at Colgate, if I brought somebody in, I'm sure this isn't true for anybody here. If I brought somebody in and we hired him, and then I found out 6 months later he wasn't any good, he or she, it'll take me a year and a half to get rid of him. Is that true in your business? Yeah. HR would say, show me the development plan. How did got to give the guy a chance, got to go through one performance cycle. Many times I knew the guy or was a schmuck, right? But you can't get rid of him, right? So it takes time, and it's a lot of work. But you got to start doing it. You got to get rid of people that don't perform. And then on the recruiting side, we'll cover this a little bit deeper. A lot of people say, I'm just outsourced, I'll have HR. You've got to do that yourself. This is this leadership issue I talked about. You as an individual and your companies have to say, I'm going to manage my talent. And when I recruit, I'm going to be deeply involved. You've got to have a good process. You got to have, I would recommend, I'll go deep into universities. You want to make sure that you understand what the fitness for purpose would be. So when we rewrote these job descriptions, which I'll come back to in a minute, we actually had to write the skills we wanted into the job descriptions. I'll come back to that in a minute. So when you interview people, this is an older study, but it's a pretty good study, talks about what do you do for the people you have, these high-performance people, right? So these are the people that you value most, right? And as usual, salary's not the number one, it's challenging work and all this stuff. You got to have some plan to say, what are you going to do with these high-performing people, these people that you want to retain? You better give them challenging work. You better pay them hopefully above average, because that's what you got them there for. And that's not easy to do in big corporations, because a lot of times average is everything, right? You want to encourage work-life balance. This was not a big thing in my life, but it's a big thing now. This is what these people want. They want to work from home. How many people work from home now? Yeah. So if you were at Colgate when I was there, that was taboo. You couldn't work from home. Now they allow it, by the way. Because they thought, what would those people be doing? They'd be goofing off at home, right? But eventually they allowed it. But that's a change, and you need to mentor these people. So we're going to talk about recruiting. So here's the test question, and since I'm a professor, I'm allowed to have a test question. So what you want to do is, you have a lot of choices. You want to be able to recruit people from these areas. And I'm going to ask you a question, and which one do you think is the best, right? So here's your options. You're now talking about, how do I get people into my organization? First one is that if you're in the supply chain, you say, let's get people from supply chain. So let's get some people from manufacturing to work in our area. Right? Or let's get people in quality to come work in procurement. Whatever you want to do, right? That's pretty straightforward. Or internal hiring. You might say, particularly when we were doing indirects at Colgate in procurement, you might hire a marketing person that's interested in procurement because he's a subject matter expert about how to buy advertising, and then you train him how to work in procurement. That's a good solution, right? You do external hiring, which we'll cover. We'll cover university recruiting. Some people, is a good strategy, they go externally and they hire a temporary person. Does anybody do that here? And they bring them in from the outside, and if they work out, you hire them. Right? Verizon does a lot of that. Or you could say, and this one you might say, let's bring somebody in from some other division in some Thailand or someplace and put them on special assignment, see how they work out, and then if they work out, we'll hire them. That's a pretty good way to do it. And then lastly, you can outsource non-strategic areas. So an example would be from 2004 to 2008, we outsourced all tactical procurement and all procurement to pay to IBM. So we had less, those jobs are no longer needed in Colgate. So what do you think is the best? Who thinks the best? What's the best way?
All of them.
Yeah, you bet. Why? Because you got to use all these levers to get people, because you have a talent shortage, if you believe my premise to say that you have a problem. And you got to think of all these. And if you aren't, you're not leveraging all these, and all these are easy.
What companies have talent shortages?
Well,
Which industries?
I don't know about industries, but I'll tell you, we interviewed our board. We have about 20 people on our board, and I asked Bill McClure from Novartis. He said that, very interesting thing. He said, do you have a problem in talent during the recession? He said something very interesting. He said, Don, I get 400 resumes, but none of them are qualified. So,
meaning they were laid off from finance and they were looking for a job? Or?
People that just don't have the right skill sets. They're not matching for what you need in your supply chain.
So they just throwing crap at the wall.
Yeah. So I don't know industries, but I just would say this is going to happen. Demographics is going to force you in all industries. You can either believe it or not, but I don't think demographics is going to change it. So I would expect it would be, now there might be some that are better than worse. Food industry is pretty stable. I could argue that defense is going to go down because the military is going to spend less. But overall, there's going to be shortages.
Geographically, it may not. See if geographically, do you see where that would be stronger or weaker, or what are the trends there?
I don't know. I don't have the details on that, but I would just say it's going to happen across the board. But certainly, certain industries will be better than worse. I mean, let's look at pharma, right? The pharma is interesting. It can be good or bad. Some people believe that the new regulations are going to increase pharma, and some people believe that the intellectual property, because they have having the new drugs not coming out, will be less. So I don't know. Anybody have an opinion? I don't know. I'm not an expert by region geographically.
Well, I work for Pfizer, so I would agree.
Yeah. Pfizer's got some jobs. Okay. And so here's a couple of things. So when you start recruiting, you got to have a good job description. So I know this probably didn't happen to you. So when we said we're going to have these new jobs in Colgate when I was there, you go get the job description, if you can find it, and blow the dust off. And I don't know about you, but most of the job descriptions were very dated. And the only reason we updated it because we were changing jobs for 70% of the people. So I don't know if that's true in your companies, but I'd suspect that somebody wrote the job description 10 years ago, it's pretty old. Make sure you handle the interview process correctly. I hear stories even with students, but I also heard of the people where people have students or they have candidates sitting in lobbies for an hour past the time they're supposed to take them. I know you wouldn't do it in this room, but that certainly doesn't send the right signal if you have talent shortages.
I think, Don, the other question about job descriptions, I mean, it depends on what the job is. Because, today with the computers, with technology, geography is not a major player. I mean, there is, in some cases, if you want to have training or get a learning in a different country, assigned to a position in, whether it's Ireland or China or wherever it is. But job descriptions are really in flux. And in order to hire, I think where you're going is with today's marketplace for new hires, whether they've got 10 years, 5 years, no years, or 25 years, the job description has really got to be very flexible towards, what you want to accomplish and take in technology. 5 years ago, we didn't have Twitter. We didn't have a lot of, we didn't have Facebook. We didn't have a lot of this stuff. And today, that's a major marketing tool. So you've really got to develop a job description.
So it can be flexible, but it also ought to be current. You wouldn't want to read all the job description.
It's got to be current, but it's got to fit the environment that you want to hire in and target the the population you want to work with.
I would agree with that. Okay. Cultural fit, at least our HR people would do that. Marketing dynamics is interesting. So I'm going to use my procurement experience because it's the most recent. So when we started expanding indirect procurement people, we had a very small group. We were expanding it. We didn't know the market. We couldn't hire anybody. Well, we found out that we were underpaying both the people at work as well as we couldn't get people. Because at that particular time, indirects is the stuff that does not go in your product, right? So directs are like, raw materials and packaging and chemicals that go in toothpaste. Indirects are advertising and consulting and, MRO and all that stuff. So the indirects was kind of new to us. But what we didn't know is that the few jobs we had in indirects, we were outdated, and those HR people, I love them dearly, but they had no reason to go out and survey the market. And these indirect people were getting hired left and right. So we'd go to the market and say, we want to pay 80 grand. They go, we couldn't get anybody. And trust me, HR is not going to go out and survey indirects unless you ask them. So timing is a real problem. And try to close these deals very quickly. Again, if you have a talent problem. Okay, so now assuming you've got these people coming into your company, what do you do with them, right? How do you retain them? So here's just a few things. The first thing is, I mentioned earlier, you want to take these high potential people, these people that are in that upper right-hand corner, whatever system you use, and you want to make sure you maintain them. But I always put a but behind it, because a lot of people forget that it isn't just the high potential. Sometimes you have subject matter experts in your business that you want to keep. And you want to make sure you keep them happy also. Not that they necessarily leave, but you don't want to lose the fact. So we all have subject matter experts. They're not going to take my job or your job or whatever, but you want to be able to make sure you keep those people motivated too. That doesn't mean everybody, but you know who they are. Those are the guys you say, John's the guy, he knows more about this than anybody in the world. And he's not going to take my job, but we got to make sure we protect him. So I say you got to do both. All right? We tend to only do career discussions maybe once a year if we have enough guts to do that about careers. Some people don't want to talk about this because it's kind of personal. I would suggest you have it more frequently. Particularly with millennials. They want to talk about careers. Retention programs we did during 2004-2008 Colgate. We offered our high potentials. We gave them a retention bonus so they wouldn't leave. And most of your companies might do something like that. You should ask. Because when I got involved with it back in 2004, I found out we did it with IT people and a whole bunch of other people. And we gave them a 3-year bonus at the end if they'd stay with us during the transition. So if you say it can't be done, it can be done. You can have rotational assignments. Most people say about rotational assignments, they say, oh, well, but if we rotate them, we're going to lose all the expert with John when John goes over here. Yeah, but if you don't rotate them, right, you might lose them. Simple thing. Doesn't cost you a dime. And hopefully, if you do rotate him back or whatever, he's going to be a more valued employee. Simple thing. Special assignments we talked about. We at Colgate used to bring people in, particularly from all over the world, Thailand or Malaysia or those kind of places, or Europe. just bring them in for 6 to 9 months and have them do a special project. And some of them stayed, some of them went home, but at least that way it was motivational for them. They had to live away from their family for a few months, but it was pretty motivational to come in and live in New York City for a couple of months. Right? Simple thing, doesn't cost you a dime. Top managed exposure. So yeah, you want those young people and other people to come in and make presentations to your staff, but why not make presentations to your boss's staff? And if it's a really good program, why not make a presentation to the senior staff? Doesn't cost you a dime. By the way, it's pretty easy to get on those agendas if you've never done it. Right? You tell them you got some great project you want them to talk about. Take risks on people. So what happened in Colgate, I'm just using an example because it's fairly recent. So we had the senior people, we knew exactly what we wanted. We had good team players down here. Our problem was the middle. And the reason was that was problem is that we were running 32 different category teams at Colgate. And we needed leaders to run these global teams. Most of these people operated very well within a region or in a country. We asked them to run global teams, and we found we didn't have enough of those people. So we take some risks. So we might take somebody that's only worked for us for 2 years and say, I want you to run a global team. And mostly in the old days of Colgate, that was no way. Only 2 years, that's not enough experience. But you got to take some risks, right? So it takes, what's the worst case? So 1 or 2 people didn't make it, but most of them did. And I think we sometimes don't think about that. We know recognition is more than money. This is the last one. Leave the door open. I always tell a story about one of our indirect people that was a high potential person. He came to me and he said, I'm leaving. I'm going to go for some other large consumer products company in New Jersey. I said, oh, geez, you've only been here 3 years. You're on a fast track. You're doing very well. He said, no, I'm leaving. I got a better job. I said, okay. Well, 2 things I said to him. Number 1, don't ever badmouth the Colgate or the person that you're working for, because those people may leave, go to another company, and you may want to work for them, right? And 2, if you're not happy, call me back and I'll bring you back. Now, most people don't have the courage to do that. He went over to this other company, I'm talking a large consumer products company, I'll tell you what it is. Went over there, they had changed bosses on him from the time they offered him to the time he came in. The guy was a jerk. He called me up and he said, can I come back? I said, you bet. And he's still there. So that's important.
Don?
Yep.
One other thing that we can add to that now is being able to accommodate those employees who change from career-oriented to job-oriented because of change of lifestyle, maybe having to take care of parents or women taking care of children. A company that can adapt to that and being able to shift the focus for that individual for 2 to 5 years or 10 years, whatever it is.
That's a very good point. Yeah, most big companies aren't flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're better. I don't know, Gary, you tell me, but most people aren't real flexible there. Colgate was not. They're probably better, but they're
Smaller companies are beginning to
they're starting to recognize it. Yeah, I would agree. All right, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. This is a big area in management development program. I could spend all night talking about training development. But I'm just going to give a couple highlights, which you all know because you've been here. So the first one is you got to set challenging objectives, particularly for these high performers, because if you want to make sure you set the bar very high, so they work very hard, and that's very important. And you want to have hard and soft things. So I'm going to show this around. Read these back. Do not steal these. These fell in my briefcase on the way out to at Colgate. These are core competencies for Colgate. This is a reference guide. This is a global. You can look through them. These are the soft stuff that we used to. So we would take, and I'll pass this around. You can take a look at them. We would take top 3 every year and evaluate the person on how they did their jobs. I don't know if you have this in your performance system, but you can look at it. Right? Not talking about did you achieve the cost savings or did you achieve on-time delivery. I'm talking about softly. How did you get this done? And they would actually tell you what works and what behaviors you should change, you shouldn't do. So you can look at these and take a look at them. And I think we did a pretty good job at Colgate. Yep.
To the top 3?
Yeah, because there'd be 20 in here, so we'd try to pick at least 3 competencies that we thought were important to the job. And these would be the same competencies if they're in the new job description.
Okay.
All
Now
right?
you're talking about top 3 people.
No, top 3 competencies. I'm sorry, did I say that? So and you could have 10, but I mean, I don't know about you, but we always felt that let's just have 3. Let's work on those 3, and how are we going to improve these competencies for these people? All right? Hard and soft. Session planning. Colgate was good at this, better than any other company I worked for. But they had a formal process, so we would, in our own department, evaluate the 500 the 500 procurement people that work for me. We'd roll it up and do boxes where people were and all that kind of stuff. But more importantly, we'd take those top people and we would roll it up to the supply chain. I worked for a guy named Dave Groner, Senior VP of Supply Chain. He'd do it at that level. And then more importantly, which I thought was interesting, is the CEO, Ruben Mark, required once a month to have one group present at his senior staff team. So I don't know, you probably don't know, but Ruben Mark was as good or better than Jack Welch. He's probably the best CEO I've ever met, but he never advertises himself. But he thought it was important at his staff meeting once a month to have one of the departments. It could be marketing 1 month, supply chain. So this was a big deal. So you had to roll it up from my group to supply chain, then you had to come forward and do a complete review. So you say, well, I can't do that in my company. Well, why don't you start in your department? Right? You can start there. You don't have to go too big. Just do it in your own department. They would hold the managers accountable for training and development. Now, we always believed that the employee had responsibility to manage his own training, but the manager had to suggest what training he needed. So if you went year 2, either to Dave, my boss, or if it got to Ruben, and you didn't execute those training things that you said you would, you got hammered. So it was clear. If you said you're going to send him, we're talking about presentation skills. If you're going to send him to a presentation skills training session, he better damn well go. Now it's the individual person that's responsible to make sure he goes, but you as a manager better make sure, because you're the one that gets beat up when he doesn't. And you just need that a couple times, and finally you get it, right? You say, look, I'm only going to have a couple of these, and I'm going to get them done, because I don't want to get beat up. But the point is, it's important. Right? And then this is a hard one in big corporations, but we did the best that we could. But it's hard to really reward extraordinary performance. And most big corporations have limits and rules and all stuff. But if the guy's really good in contributing, they need to be more flexible. So if you can change that, great, but it's very, very difficult. So I didn't want to spend a lot of time in management development. I could have talked in training development all night. But let me talk about partnering with universities, because that's what I'm good at, right? So I'll tell you about it. I thought it'd be interesting. So if you said to me, how do you do it? Just partner with a university. All right? Partner with Rutgers or whoever you want to do, Penn State or something. Pick a university and partner with them. And I'll tell you what we do and what I've seen successful, and you can make your own judgment whether you want to do it. This happens to be a quote from AMR, which is now Gartner Research. I don't read charts, but I'm going to read this one because it's very interesting. So this is a report that came out in 2008. It says, increasing visibility, importance of supply chain management allows a crisis is building with increased responsibility, complexity being driven as part by globalization, and universities and professional groups struggling to independently interpret industry needs. And universities have an opportunity to take a leadership role, which I think we've done in Rutgers. But most companies don't know what to do with this, and most schools don't know what to do with it. Personal opinion. So if you're running a supply chain department, you worry about these things. You worry about leading edge research, right? That's what schools do. Rutgers is a thing. You worry about, you got to be good at teaching. I'm going to spend most of the next couple minutes talking about partnering with industry. So the first thing is if the school that you pick has some sort of center. Now, we happen to have Rutgers Center for Supply Chain Management, which I happen to be business director of. And we have about 20, 23 companies. Many people in this room belong to this particular center. And they will do things like review our curriculum. They'll share research. We do projects, student projects with them. It's a great way to do it. So many of these big schools, Penn State has it, Tennessee has it, all these big schools have it. But that's a plus for you because you can get a lot of benefits. We get benefits by hearing what you want, and you get benefits. And it's a great way to link with the school. So if you can do that, great. Not all schools have it. Foster collaboration between universities and industry. I'll bet you don't do this. I wish I had more industry people beating my door down asking me to do research. Some do, most don't. Unfortunately, in universities, people get rewarded for publishing regardless of where it comes from. But you really, if you want to get linked in, have them go give them a project. Say, do research in this particular area. And if you don't want to publish it, blind copy it so they don't know. But it's another good way to do it. We have some excellent professors you could link with at Rutgers to do that. Demand executive education programs on campus and off. You can at Rutgers, we run 4 summits a year approximately. You can go to these summits, get involved in the school that way, or you can do some in-house training. So I do in-house training for people like Dell and those kind of people. So, but it's a way, right? So you have 2 choices. You can train, do this all yourself, because I'm sure you got a lot of time on your hands and develop these training programs, or you could have a local university do it for you. It's another great way to link with the university. Got to visit the campus. When people say to me, well, what should I do? I said, I don't care. Just do something. Come in for a lunch and learn. Come in and take some interviews. Do a case competition. I run a regional case competition with top named regional schools every year. You come and be a judge. Do something to get involved in the school. Come into a class and be a guest speaker. Very simple things, right? I'll come back to this over and over again about internships, co-ops, and projects, right? Novice hiring, I'll cover that later. And if you can, focus on end-to-end supply chain. We're not a logistics school, we're not a procurement school, we're an end-to-end supply chain school. So we teach our students, and we want you to approach us that we work with suppliers, manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, right? Customers, and even consumers. So find schools that are end-to-end, because quite frankly, the one thing that our advisory board says, they want more people to have understanding of the end-to-end supply chain. They want them to be a procurement expert. They don't want them to be a logistics expert. So look for schools that do that. We happen to do it. So what do these students look like? And I'm going to speak from my MBA experience because that's where I work. They're kind of new breed. Most of them have dual degrees. About 40% of our students have dual degrees in finance and supply chain and marketing. Right? They're generally about 40% have dual degrees. So you could bring them in. They have both interests in both areas. You could at least think about moving them from one part to another of your business. Test the waters for co-ops, right? The way I describe it is that you bring them in for an internship or a co-op. You're going to know at the end of 14 weeks or the end of 6 months whether you like them or not. And they're going to know whether they like you. So it's a very good opportunity to get to know these students. So what I tell people is, and I'll talk about it later, it's no risk hiring, right? So I know it doesn't happen to you, but what used to happen to us once in a while is we'd hire somebody and we made a mistake. Because you know what we do, right? We bring them in, you don't do this, but we used to Colgate. What we do is we bring them in, we have 8 interviews for 20 minutes each, and everybody interviews them for 20 minutes to a half hour, and then we get together as a group and we make a decision. You don't do that, do you? And then we're stuck with them if they're no good for a year and a half. And we didn't see any on-the-job performance. We can only do what he told us. But if you had them in an internship or co-op, you can have a pretty good feel whether that person's going to work or not. Seems like a lot less risk, doesn't it? And I've told you there's talent shortage, but what's going to happen to you over the next few years is you're going to have a talent shortage, but these kids are going to jump. You got to expect it. They're going to go from company to company, right? Because they're going to get paid. The salaries are going to go up, and they're going to go jump from one place to another. So you got to just be ready for it. You're going to have more turnover, which means you got to be more aggressive, bringing more people in. It's going to happen to you. You're going to say, Klock told me this. He told me this was going to happen. It's going to happen. All right, you got to have a multi-pronged strategy. So let me tell you about Rutgers students, and you can make your own decision on what you think. So this is our MBA class last year on internships. We're the largest major on campus in MBA school. These are full-time students I'm talking about. 32 of those majors, 37% of the class, #1 major on campus. All 32 students had summer internships. We placed 100% of our supply chain management majors for the last 6 years during a recession. Now think about that. Does that say there's demand for supply chain students? I mean, it speaks to the quality program, the quality of students, but think about it. In a recession, we're still replacing them. 6 years in a row, 100% of our students got jobs for summer internships. We're pretty proud of that, and I'd argue that says something. Now, we're lucky to have a lot of companies and all that kind of stuff, but that says something that they're in demand, eh? Here's where they work. I'm not going to read these, you can just look at these. Here's Mars, by the way. Talk about Mars earlier. Not all from New Jersey.
Question, Don. Of the students you've placed in those last 6 years, do you track how many stay with that company versus move to other companies? Do you get that information back? Do they correspond?
We could, I don't. I guess maybe Career Services might have it.
Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit about how the real progressive companies do it. They link them all the way through. If you give me a minute, I'll talk about it. I don't have the numbers. People like J&J link them all the way through if they want them. It gets difficult to answer your question because F1s, the international students, can be more challenging. But I'll come back to that. This is our full-time students. We had 25 students last year. 35% of the class, 2 students are not seeking. 92% got jobs 90 days after graduation. And you might say, well, what about those 2 students not seeking? What were they doing? So I said, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I said, where is this guy? This guy was a pretty good guy, right? So we tracked him down, Career Services. I mean, I thought the guy was aggressive. And we said to him, what are you doing? You've got a 90-day thing coming up. What happened? He says, oh, I got my MBA, and I'm in Dubai, and I'm celebrating for a year before I look for a job. I said, isn't that nice? For a year. Got married, was traveling the world for a year. That was one of the students. I said, must be nice. Here's where they went. So there's some overlap between the 2 groups. So I'll come back to your question now. So this is how I recommend you do internships at co-ops, right? And this is very basic, so I'm not going to bore you, but the real good companies do this as a discipline. You got to have a formal program. You can't just do it ad hoc. You can't wake up tomorrow morning and say, I'm going to hire a student. What are you going to do long term with these students? You're going to have a program every year. Because as I said before, the number one, I said somebody at during the cocktail party, the number one advertisement for your company is the student that got an internship and got a job. It isn't me, it's not Career Services. Because they say, oh, I got a job at Colgate for some internship, they treated me good, and then they hired me. That makes a lot of kids want to go after the internship the next year. So you got to have a formal program. Just as an example, Colgate normally only takes 1 to 2 students every year, but they always take 1 to 2 internships, and they usually make offers, if assuming it worked out, to one of those 2 students. They don't take 10, they don't take 15, just 1 or 2, but everybody on campus knows that's a beautiful job to get. You got to have a job to put them in. You can't ask them to show up and just say, I want you to file in the filing cabinets for 14 weeks, right? You got to have a real job you have to have. You got to have money. If you're interested, you can go to we do publish this on our website. You can look on our Rutgers website. We do publish what interns get paid, and it varies quite widely for internships. But you need it. If you don't get this straight up front, you're going to have HR worrying about, what we're going to pay these people. You could have relocation. Many companies do. Of course, if you hire from Rutgers, you're going to have probably more Jersey students, so you won't have to pay the relocation, but that's up to you. If you want to bring them in from Pennsylvania, that's okay. But you have to have relocation, you have to have apartments, and those type of things. Mars does a lot of it. You got to recruit them, fill the positions, and then once they get there, you have to. One of the most critical things you can do is you have to have a real job, somebody to at least check in with them, manage them, make sure it's a meaningful job and something that they contribute. Because if they have a bad experience, they're not going to want to come back. You put them filing papers in a file room, they ain't coming back. So you're investing a lot of time and energy, so you have to do that. And then what a lot of good companies do is they add sizzle to it. So what they do is they have lunches with the CEO, they have meetings with all the other interns from all the other colleges, they have some activities going on all summer long or during the co-op that keeps them going. All right, so let me talk about a company, just to give you an idea, to answer your question. Just one zip. So I can't tell you the name. The first name is Jay, the second one's Jay, right? So what they do is they come in the fall. They recruit 2 to 3 of our supply chain managers every year. They come in the fall, and what they do is at usually about December, no later January, they've already made offers for internships. And what they do during the fall is they come in and do a lunch and learn. They interview the students. Then 2 years ago, they flew them to Disneyland, all the students from all the schools, and they interviewed them both informally and formally. And this year they didn't have the money, so they did it in New Jersey for the sports kids this year. And then they picked the students, they offered them jobs in December. So these students got a job in December for an internship. So they got it locked and loaded, they don't have to worry about it the second semester. And Then they go ahead and do their summer internship. They have all these sizzle things they do with the CEO, lunch and learns, all this stuff they do to keep them actively involved in the company. And at the end of that summer internship, after 14 weeks, they make a decision whether they like it or don't like it, and they give you direct feedback. Yes, we're going to hire you, and we're going to send you an offer in the early fall. So these kids get jobs, offers like in October before they graduate the following May. And then what they say is, you know, we're pretty busy around here. Would you mind working 10 to 15 hours a week and keep the project going that you worked on during the summer? So they got them hooked. Right? They got the job offer. They're working 10 to 15 hours. They're putting money. They've got a connection, and then they can't wait till they get their MBA and go to work directly. I'm not suggesting everybody can do that, but the point would be that's how they get the best of the best. They hire early. Early bird gets the worm, and they keep them engaged during that 2-year process.
Hey, Don, can you make a reference to an undergrad as far as that goes with the internship? My question is it's never too early to try to get involved with an internship co-op, freshman year, sophomore year, junior year?
We don't, what happens with us is that we generally really promote it starting in sophomore. Not all the students want to do that. Freshman's a little bit early. But we encourage them more intern co-ops the earlier the better. But certainly in their junior year. But if you can get them earlier, the better, I would suggest it. And some companies will hire the same student year after year. My belief is earlier the better, and early bird gets the worm, and you get better selection the earlier you get a hold of these students. That's my belief. I don't handle undergrads, but
Thank you.
What you find?
Yep.
Right. And then, as I said earlier, if it's a marriage, they like you like them, you offer them a job, just like the J&J did. And I'll come back to my point. Does that seem like no-risk hiring to you? You're going to know, right? You got 14 weeks of data. You got them continually working. Of course, you gave them an offer, so I guess you're going to have to work with them. But you know a lot about this student, and they love you. A lot cheaper than hiring on the outside. Got to pay those recruiters, Gary. All right. So just a couple key takeaways. I'll take some questions. So first one is that hopefully I made the point that this is important to you in your business, maybe yourself personally. That's your own decision. But talent management is probably more important than anything else you do. Most people don't spend enough time doing it. You're going to have to do it because of these problems that we talked about. If you haven't done an internal skills assessment, that's it doesn't cost you a lot of money. You can do that tomorrow morning. You can either hire somebody outside, do it yourself, maybe get HR to do it. You got to think about all those places you can get these people, and of course I push universities because that's where I'm from, but there's lots of other places you can get good quality people. And you're inside your business, external people, external and internal, that kind of stuff. Hopefully I made the point that these students, and I'm just talking for Rutgers because that's all I know, is that they're in demand, and they get jobs, and you've got to start early. Now, you come to me in May, we'll have a couple of students. There generally will be F1 international students. Good kids, bright. I have no trouble recommending them, but you're not going to get the cream of the crop that the people like J&J pulls out in the fall. I'm not derogatory towards the ones in May. There are a lot of good kids. It's just that it's a bigger pond to fish in, right? And hopefully you got to develop a formal strategy, and then hopefully I convinced you that you want to partner with Rutgers. And with that, I'll take some questions. Talk to you. No? Okay, thank you.